Great. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our discussion today. It's Pride and Self-Care. And I was just talking a little bit with our panelists, who I'll let introduce themselves in a moment. But at NAMI, we really wanted to do a focus on Pride, first of all, this year, because we think it's an important aspect of mental health for people who identify as LGBTQ+, and it's also a really important opportunity for people to hear about the experience of LGBTQ+ people. So in that, because we live in an environment that is affected by politics and social events and all kinds of things, we started having a discussion about kind of sometimes maybe the heaviness of being a part of the LGBTQ plus community, and how the things in this world could be affecting people all of the time, but definitely during Pride as well. It's a balance of joy and also sometimes pain, existing in a world that has a limited understanding and sometimes a level of ignorance that can really be harmful to people's mental health. So we invited some people here today that have different perspectives. We're really excited to hear from them. So I'm just gonna open up the floor after I just give a quick intro of who I actually am. So Ariel Coffman, I'm the part of the board of directors at NAMI New York State. I am a person that identifies as queer. My identity has evolved over many years. I'm also a person that identifies as being in recovery, and I am an ally and support to somebody with a serious mental health issue as well. So that's where I'm coming from. So I'll open up the floor to our three panelists, and whoever wants to jump in first, go right ahead, and you can introduce yourself, and then we'll start our discussion from there.
I can give it a go. So my name is Phil. I'm a certified recovery peer advocate and certified peer specialist. I work at Baltic Street as the New York City Regional Peer Coordinator for the statewide Regional Peer Network. That's with the Wellness Collaborative of New York, a collection of generally peer-run agencies, organizations, and groups at Fountain House. As a peer specialist, facilitating groups. And I'm an ordained minister with the United Life Church Ministries.
Thanks, Philip.
And I can go next. My name is Alicia Khan. I'm the Director of Queers for Justice at the Newburgh LGBTQ Center. My pronouns are she, her. I identify as an amazing trans woman. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. And my work involves at the intersections of queerness and incarceration, and advocating for those who can't necessarily advocate for themselves. And I'll pass it to the last panelist.
Hello, my name is Hamad. I go by pronouns they, he to represent my journey. I identify as non-binary. I also identify as neurodivergent, which is a term that has been emerging for a few years now, which means that my brain does not work like most folks that have social dominance, which is neurotypicals. I work as an education and social justice consultant. I primarily work with K-12 schools and universities and non-for-profit, and make sure that those environments are ready to support our marginalized identities and younger selves, basically. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you for being here. All right, well, so we'll kind of just jump in. I mean, our first discussion question is going to be about celebrating Pride, and why is Pride so important to you? And you know, how do we talk about that in a way that, you know, speaks to our own experience with Pride? So just to roll it back, why is Pride so important to you? So maybe I think sometimes I have a little bit of divergence myself. So I appreciate that as well.
You know, for me, you know, Pride Month is just about having fun. I had a lot of challenges the past 4 or 5 weeks. You know, end up leaving my partner of 5 years, you know, for safety reasons, and just kind of recollecting and rebooting my life. But it didn't disqualify me, and it hasn't disqualified me for, you know, showing my gay colors, you know, the rainbow flag. So I decided on June 5th to go to Queen's Pride. I got there early to get the best swag, and I just had such a wonderful time, you know, with all the performers, you know, dancing, singing, lip singing, and I was just so bubble with joy, you know, just celebrating, you know, myself really, and the entire, you know, LGBTQ plus community, you know, just the solidarity amongst us this year, especially because, you know, there hasn't been any sort of parading or, you know, or street fairs, you know, in 2 years. So just to get back to that, it was just so amazing and so freeing.
Yeah, I know that's a big part of the experience this year for a lot of people, that we've been, you know, kind of homebound, many of us, for the past couple of years. And so the return of Pride festivities has a lot of different feelings and thoughts attached to it. Hamad and Alicia, have you gotten to celebrate it all yet this year?
Yeah, I did here in Albany, New York. Over the weekend, we had Black and Latino Pride, and after that, we had the Capital Region Pride. It was very festive and nice to see people out and about after 2 years, because we did not have that celebration for a while. I celebrate Pride because I was not able to celebrate Pride all the time. I've only started celebrating Pride when I was 21, I want to say. I've lived in countries where Pride does not exist. So I also like to make sure that during Pride, I celebrate my own existence, because there've been times in my life where I did not think that I'll make it to 30 because of how, you know, the systems that we live in, and because of my mental health. But today I am here speaking to all of you. I am 32, so that's what I celebrate. I also celebrate it for our the people who came before us, who have done a lot of work for us to be able to be our queer selves and be able to march and create a safe environment, and for the ones who are going to come after us, for our babies, because maybe somebody like me will see me marching and will say, oh, somebody like me exists and I am okay.
Yeah, that was really powerful to hear from you, Hamad, about celebrating your own existence. I think that's a really profound way to characterize Pride and to think of it. So thank you. Alicia, What about you?
When I think about Pride, right, and I want to pick up on what you said, Hamad. Remembering those who came before us, right, and remembering that when the Stonewall Uprising happened in '69, it was against police brutality, right? That's what it was about, right? The brick, thrown, around the rainbow, as I like to call it, right, is because that happened, right? Because as a collective community, they said enough was enough. It's time to make a change, right? And recognizing that, like, it's June, like Pride is every day, but it is June. There is a month where we can be, there's a month of where we get to celebrate exactly who we are, our most authentic selves, right? Where we can walk down the streets, we can have rainbow flags, waving, on our porches, right? We can have the rainbow flags, we can have the trans flag, right? We can have all these flags waving, identifying who we are as a community, despite what we hear, right? Despite in Pride Month of all the things that are going on, but we're here to hold space, right? To pay homage, right? To pay respects to those who came before us. And as you said, Hamad, like for the future generations, right? For the future, and it's all throughout, I'm moving soon, but I have a balcony, right? And on my balcony, right, I have the Progress Pride flag, I have the trans flag, and I have the Black Lives Matter flag hanging and flying, right? And I live on a very busy street, and I can't, there's been so many times of whether I'll see in like a Facebook local group or just people mentioning something about, hey, those flags on the arterial, who lives there? And I'd be, and they'll be like, yeah, like my child sees that every day. And I was like, that is awesome. There's somebody like me, right? And just the empowerment, the ability to do that, right? The ability to be in a place, be in my community of where, yeah, it's visibly, I'm queer, here I am, to be that visible and to recognize that here we are. Let's celebrate the fact that we can be in all in our queer glory, right? And what are we doing to pave the ways so future generations, right? Generations right now who are children having to, struggle to be their most authentic selves, and, in various different parts of the country where pride does not exist. That is not a thing, right? When we talk about pride and LGBTQ rights, like on an international level, that's another level outside of the struggles that we face here in America, and recognizing that it could be worse, right? And taking care of yourself in the process. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that that kind of hooks into what Dana just said as well in the chat about the absolute denial of the existence of LGBTQ people, even here, and it just kind of brought up a little bit of emotion for me when you were talking about hanging your flags, because, I live on Long Island, so I'm sure there may be people that know about how Long Island is. It's a very segregated place. It has a very significant history of racism and segregation and homophobia. And so while I feel comfortable in my community being out and, having people know who I am, and in my workplace, in my neighborhood, I don't feel safe hanging a flag. It's unfortunate and sad, but, there are people of certain ilk living in my neighborhood, and it's scary, sometimes. And that definitely is a factor, I think, that affects my mental health as well. You have to go certain places to feel comfortable. So yes, so Pride in June, it just gives us so much space. And I think that that's a really valuable piece of that. And also I really appreciate linking it back in to the history, because that is the part that really gives me fortitude. And what Hamad said about opening up the conversation, for our young people, and how just seeing somebody being out and hearing them feeling confident enough to be out.
Yeah,
really.
Ariel, just before we move on to the next.
Somebody call on me, for God's sake.
Yeah, I'm coming to you right now, Robin. Yeah, I was just going to say, before we move on to our next question, it looks like Robin has a question or something she'd like to share.
Sure. I'm so sorry, Robin. I didn't see your hand. I apologize.
Okay, I'm from New York City, originally from the Bronx, and I'm 66, so I'm older than most of the people probably on this phone call, but that doesn't matter. I grew up in a household in the Bronx, lower middle class, and I had two sisters who were gay. We didn't have a word for it back then. It was like, Luann and Ginny don't like boys. You know, that kind of crap. But we knew in the family that they were gay, but we didn't have a word for it. And I grew up in this environment in New York City, and it was okay. I didn't think it was abnormal at all until I moved to Jersey in college to go to Westminster Choir College in Princeton. And there were a lot of gay people. And I was like, oh, this is great. People are out in the open. But I grew up in that environment in the Bronx, but it was always, nobody talked about it. Luann doesn't like boys, that kind of stuff. I'm so happy. I'm so blessed to see that all of you are here today. It's a blessing.
Well, and we feel blessed to have allies. So thank you, Robin, for being
And
supportive.
I wanted to also point out, I lived through the AIDS crisis. And it was absolutely horrible. All the people we lost.
Yeah. So
and this might be before your generation, but those people before you, parents, aunts, uncles, please speak to them and get the history of what it was like. It was horrible. But you need to know, you can't understand the history of this country without knowing what the Civil War was. You can't understand the history of LGBTQ in this country if you don't know what the AIDS crisis was in the 80s. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, thank you so much, Robin. It's so true. When we talk about the history, I have to think of all the great activism from ACT UP and other activists who
But
worked.
all the people who died, and at that time, in the early 80s, they said it was a gay disease.
Robin, we're really trying to focus on self-care right now.
Okay. All right.
So we appreciate your contribution, and I do absolutely agree with you that understanding the AIDS crisis is essential to understanding the history of LGBTQ in America. So thank you for being an ally, and thank you for being supportive and for speaking up. Definitely, as far as Pride is concerned, I wanted to talk a little bit too about the experience of people celebrating Pride this year in this new normal, I guess we could call it. And I know that that phrase is so played out, so I'm so sorry for throwing it out again, but it's just the only thing that qualifies. I won't call anything post-pandemic because obviously we're still living in a world where there's a lot of impacts from the pandemic. People are still getting sick. So on a basis of celebrating Pride, like, is that a factor that has occurred to any of our panelists, you know, when they're celebrating? Like, how did that impact your experience this year?
Well, I carried the mask around and wore it when when the big crowds came, for Queens, the festival. Always, using hand sanitizer, whenever I eat or drink something. If I, oftentimes can't get to a place with a restroom, with a sink, so, hand sanitizer. So yeah, I do things like that. And also just continue to drink water, stay hydrated, with the heat waves that we've been having, and the high pollen counts. Yeah, so those are some of the precautions that I take, to stay safe. But, at the same time, I was there to have fun, and I did. I mean, a lot of people were really just anxious. I can understand totally, wanting to just to get out and be out in a way that, we did, pre-pandemic. But, obviously, there's, we're in a new era. It doesn't mean that we can't have fun and be ourselves. It's that, this is some more precautions, we have to take.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a consideration for a lot of people. We live in a different world than we did 2.5 years ago. And certainly the way we think about social gatherings, I think a lot of us, it has changed for a lot of us, and, in different ways. So I know from my experience, I'm still feeling very hesitant to be in, larger social gatherings, especially if they're indoors. I care for an elderly parent. And so Pride for me, has changed a lot over the years. And I used to go into the city and be, arm to arm with people and, be in really heavy social situations. And I used to love it. And, my kind of like level of comfort with being in social situations has changed over the years. So that is something that, as a person who experiences anxiety, as a person who is in a recovery from substance use, it has changed my view of how to celebrate Pride. So that for me is definitely something I wanted to speak about a little bit more today. But I definitely want to hear from our panelists too, like, what does Pride look like for you? Like, has it evolved over time? Do you celebrate differently now than you did before?
I would like to kind of just circle back to the concept of self-care that we're integrating within our Pride celebrations, right? So I think self-care is different for everyone, and it is up to them to determine what is self-care. But I also would like to point out the popularization and the commercialization of self-care, because in all honesty, we're all humans living on Earth, and we're all supposed to be self-caring for each other, for ourselves 24/7. It's not a thing, a day that I'll take out of the week or a couple of hours here and there. It is a constant thing. To me, it is choosing to show up for myself. I think it stems a lot, like our culture tries to create this division between, there is work, there is life, and there is work-life balance. But it's all life, really. Work is just a part of it, right? And I don't think self-care should be looked at as something that we only do every now and then. Well, it is a practice that we live with every day, 24/7, every minute of the day. I think showing up for yourself is a way of self-care. Setting boundaries is a way of self-care during Pride. And I'll stop there.
Hi, everyone. I just want to quickly address something that was said in the chat. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra Ferrugia. I am NAMI New York State's Associate Director of Communications and Outreach. And just in reference to the comment made in the chat, today's discussion is to serve the LGBTQIA community, right? We're here to talk about mental wellness and self-care. And as you can see from our panelists, we have people who identify as such. we are trying to raise the voices of trans people, people of color, and so forth. So I understand if you would like to share, but this is not the time or place. If that is not a part of your identity, if you have questions at the end, of course, we encourage this as a learning opportunity, but please wait to the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Cass. Definitely appreciate your support there. And thank you, Hamad, for talking about self-care and bringing us back to that concept. I think that what you're saying makes so much sense. It's all life is what you said. And certainly I agree. I have worked so diligently every day for the past 2.5 years to just teach myself how to slow down. First of all, not get ahead of myself, to always be evaluating situations from a perspective of, does this serve my wellness? And it's challenging because you're right. The entire lifestyle, within the United States is really built around this like go, go, go. And I think it's the same thing during Pride. It's like go, 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 party, get as much in as you can. And, I think as a person in recovery and kind of looking at it for the first time from that perspective over the past year, and not being, in a space where I want to drink and not being in a space where I want drugs in my space. I think it's been different for me to think about Pride and think about how proud I am as a queer person, but also how proud I am that I can maintain those boundaries as well during this time. And I think that that's been important to me. And there's so much commercialization of self-care and commercialization of Pride. So sometimes it starts to blur that kind of boundary of like, what does Pride look like to me? And so I think Alicia, you wanted to speak to this as well. So I'm gonna take it back to you.
Actually, this year is a really special Pride month for me in so many ways. I discovered at my first trip, and then I was convinced on my second trip of New York City Pride is not the Pride for me. Way too many people, way too long. People that love it, great. That's not how I celebrate Pride. And this year, I got to attend all different Pride events all across the Mid-Hudson Valley in New York. And because I work for an LGBTQ organization, and then the first ever like Newburgh LGBTQ Center Pride is happening like this Saturday. So hint, hint, if you want to come to Newburgh this Saturday, 12 to 4, gonna slide that plug in there. First ever Newburgh Pride. And the Newburgh LGBTQ Center is my family, right? It is my home. I was speaking before this, talking to the panelists and about like how NAMI gave me the courage as a young adult presenter to be able to share my story, to share my struggles with mental health, share my stories with addiction, to bring myself to a point of now where I share my story up in Albany in legislators with the governor. And I share my story and so many other stories, and who put me in that position was the Newburgh LGBTQ Center, was the family, that I get to work at my intersections of queerness and incarceration. And this month is special because this month marks a lot of things, right? And a lot of things are happening. At the beginning of the month, I became president of a national organization called the Alternative to Violence Project. The second trans formerly incarcerated. I am the first trans, let's get that right. I am the first trans formerly incarcerated woman who is a president of a national nonprofit. In tomorrow, actually, June 16th, I will be 5 years clean off of heroin. And then on June 21st, I will have 5 years released from prison after spending 10 years in prison. And what, on top of all of that, because of the community care networks, right? Because of the self-care that I practice with my family members on the inside, we built together community care networks of community care and safety inside of one of the most violent systems that there is. And I got to see all 27 of my team members inside of my organization who are incarcerated all across the state graduate. And that was beautiful. And today I came back from Fishkill Correctional Facility where my husband is incarcerated. He graduated with his associate's degree. And I was able to kiss him for the first time in 7 years. That like, forget everything. I'm on cloud 9 right now. Like, I committed to this panel, but like, I wanted to go, right? And just the simple of that, right? To celebrate all these amazing things, you know, that are happening within Pride Month, like, and the essence of that, right? The essence of like having, you know, the first ever Newburgh Pride, an organization that gave me so much, right? To be on a panel about self-care today, right? And, you know, queerness, right? To be able to just embrace and enjoy communities across barriers, across walls, right? Across various different intersections, all in this 1 month. A lot of emotion, a lot of power. And so like, you know, COVID kind of threw things off and how we celebrate. But I think that when we look at all together, I think the ability of how we can build relationships across barriers, how we can build relationships across states, how we can build relationships across countries, how we can build relationships across prison walls has really taught us about how we're taking care of ourselves and how we're taking care of our community and our safe COVID practices. And what does it mean to be safe, right? You know, I try not to watch the news, but like at Pride events across this country, white supremacists crashed it or was on the verge of crashing it, right? So, and this is up north, right? Like this is not the, you know, the redneck southern states, you know, excuse my language, but, you know, it's where that's not what it is, right? It's these northern states, right? These northern states, right? Like the mid-Hudson Valley is a very similar thing to Long Island. Some Democrats, right, but majority conservative district, and the school district next to mine banned half a dozen LGBTQ books in the library, right next door of my pride flags. The city line is half a mile, right next door to my pride flags, my trans flags, right, my Black Lives Matter flags. Half a dozen school books got banned in that school district. And, you know, and to recognize that, you know, to back what I was saying before of like all these amazing things happen, right? But the fight continues, right? The fight continues as, you know, we celebrate Pride, right? You know, and as we enjoy ourselves and as we take care of ourselves during Pride, it's how we define our own personal self-care really brings us into a moment of like, you know, what happens July 1st, right? What happens July 2nd? What happens July 3rd? Like throughout the year, how are we bringing more people into the space of self-care without the idea of profit, right? How are we bringing into the space of to celebrate our queerness and to be accepted? And all those capital organizations that, like, you know, you were hinting to it, Hamad, about like all the Pride material that feels good going into a store, but hey, use all those profits and donate to Black-led, Black trans-led LGBTQ organizations that lack the funding to support our most marginalized queer member community, marginalized LGBTQ members, right? And it's like, yes, sell all the merchandise, right? They got some really cute Pride merchandise, right? And it does feel affirming when you walk into the store and you see rainbows, but take all those profits and let's donate it, right? Let's donate it to the organizations that need it, right? And look into the local organization, because on the ground organizers are the ones that are doing the work to further these movements so we can all be in a space of comfortability and live our most authentic lives. But yeah, so a lot going on this Pride Month, and just like always recognizing, like, let's just work towards bringing our best lives together.
So one thing I wanna address is, which is also a form of self-care that I think maybe many of us practice, is First, everybody take a breath with me. Alicia, thank you for that contribution. I felt that you were channeling some of it, which is beautiful. I think there is a lot that is happening in the chat, and I would like to talk about a form of self-care, which is space, right? We share space with many people on this planet, in our houses, in this Zoom meeting. And a part of self-care is setting boundaries and moderating how much space each person is occupying or taking. And I believe Cass here, you did a great job at kind of, stopping the conversation because it's a panel discussion with panelists, and that's how it was advertised and clearly given the rules. But also within spaces, you give more time and listen to those who are or could be more marginalized identities. Just like what Alicia was mentioning and saying, more for trans, femme, Black organizers. Because when we center Black people in our work and in everything, subsequently all people of color are impacted. I am married because interracial marriage was possible. At the same thing, we center trans lives because subsequently all LGBTQ plus lives are impacted. And the same with the neurodivergent community. We center autistic folks because subsequently all neurodivergencies were creating that impact. I would like to pass this to Reverend Dr. Phillip and say, how do you manage space for yourself? If it's online, if it is in person, how do you perform that task of self-care when it comes to space and sharing space with people?
For starters, if there's a situation that I think may become a little volatile, emotionally, that I just announce, look, I need to take a step back, and I just go to a private spot and just kind of meditate and just dispel that. I try not to do anything when I'm angry, because I lose concentration. I may end up saying something that I will more often than not regret later. So I just announce, look, I'm going to step away, for a little bit. Maybe I'll come back, maybe I won't. But it's just my way of saying that, I'm on emotional overload. And I've been that way for the past 5 weeks, where everything just came crashing down on me. So when I went to, for instance, Queen's Pride, like I felt liberated in a lot of ways. Like I wasn't tied down to someone who, was abusive to me for 3 years, taking away, my privacy, honing in on my self-care. That's another reason why Pride means so much to me, is like I get to be, my authentic self in the sense that, I'm going to announce those boundaries. I'm not, where I was in my relationship for 5 years, I was afraid to, 100% say what's on my mind, because, I may take off, my partner. I had to really watch my words. I mean, not that I'm like mean or vindictive, I'm not. It's just that, there's just certain things that has to happen. Like, don't stifle someone that expressing anger is a human emotion. It's it's a way, for me, it's been a way of just release the tension that's in my heart, that's in my spirit, so I can continue on. It's for me, it's a sign that, okay, I'm running out of gas emotionally. I need to take a step back. I need to take a break. And when folks in your life trying to impede on that sort of care and take it away, it rouses you up even more, you know. So, you know, these are things that I've been observing, and noticing, and you know, in my life, especially the past couple of months, where things got really out of control, and I had to separate myself from, you know, that person and that home. So I'll end my discussion by saying that I believe another form of self-care is resilience, living your life despite all the heartache, you know, the horrific trauma, the BS, you know, that surrounds you. That with a good support system, you know, you can continue, you know, to live your own self-directed, authentic, you know, life, and not fabricate anything.
Yeah, hi everyone. I also just want to thank you all for bringing that up, right? Boundaries are such a big part of self-care. And also earlier, it was mentioned, you know, self-care looks different for everyone. And, you know, right now NAMICon's going on, and something one of the speakers earlier said was, you know, how the word self-care has been used in so many different ways that isn't as effective anymore. And thinking like, you know, self-care for some people maybe is candles and bubble baths, but for others, right, it's setting those boundaries, as showing that respect and care for ourselves. When we think of self-care, what it really is intentional care, right? What are we doing and how that's bettering ourselves, right? And for some people, that's social, right? Celebrating with loved ones, with family, with friends, with chosen family, right? For others, it's, you know, reflecting on your own journey, on figuring out what's next, where you are, right? Celebrating the history of the past and of the LGBTQI plus movement, and all the activism and all the great things that have been done, and how do we celebrate ourselves in that. So just, you know, once again, just wanted to just thank you all for everything that you're sharing here, and I'll let you take it away. Sorry.
No, thank you so much. Cass always has amazing contributions to every discussion. And I think that that was the thing too, and I appreciate for Hamad and Cass for reinforcing our boundaries today, because it's a space thing, and I think so many times we need to learn like how to set those boundaries for ourselves and with others, and that can be a celebration of ourselves as well as like knowing like what that boundary is, and so, you know, like I had said earlier, for me, this year has been very different as far as Pride is concerned, and the reconceptualization of Pride, and kind of seeking out new opportunities to identify with my community in a different way than I did when I was in my 20s, and we would go out to bars and, you know, be out until 6 in the morning, and, you know, that felt good to me then, and certainly don't regret any of that time in my life, but also I no longer have the energy level nor, you know, the ability to be in that kind of space due to my need to take care of my physical body and my mental state. So I guess if we wanted to talk just for a few minutes with our panelists about like, what are some of the things that you're doing to like, I wish we had a better phrase now for self-care, for intentional care. I think that is a good direction to take it for right now, but we're gonna have to keep thinking of different words. But it is something different for everybody. So I don't know that we need a catchphrase for it, but the, you know, Calgon take me away thing is certainly not where we're at right now. Although a bubble bath, you know, can be a wonderful, wonderful thing if you have time to engage in that, and that's your thing. But what are some of the things that you're doing this month to, further your ability to just feel within yourself that your boundaries are being like respected and upheld?
I've been turning to music, a different side of music as a DJ. I started DJing at my college radio station at The Ohio State University when I was in grad school in 2003. And it just opened up, new doors of connecting with other people through the gift of music and sound. And over the years, that died down. But most recently, I say within the past, 2 years, I started to get back into it. And I don't know, like music is one of the most beautiful expressions of the human experience. Of course, there's writing, poetry, art, books and things like that. And, this past Sunday was Fountain House's Pride Barbecue. We had a wonderful drag queen performer, as the main event, and it was just, everybody just had a wonderful time, was loose. There was a lot of dancing and music and things like that, and performing. That, for me, it just released something in me that I haven't felt in many, many years. Not that I was ever not comfortable in my skin since I came out in '99, but it just kind of brought me back to a place that I was before, where, yes, I can be myself, but I also am getting better at expressing my boundaries too, what I, would accept and, won't accept. And that's a very important, during these Pride events, the parades and the festivals where, every, Mary and Joseph, is, wants your attention, and just like I had to say to one person, what, I can't, I just got out of a relationship, I'm not ready to date, I'm not ready to fool around or what have you. And it's, I felt good saying that because I didn't disrespect the other person, and also, taking care of myself.
Great. I also just wanted to share, one thing we really wanted to discuss was tips for supporting our friends who are in recovery. And one thing I noticed this weekend, celebrating the different events here in the Capital Region for Pride, at Black and Latino Pride and the Pride Festival here, is that they had a section where you could buy alcoholic beverages, and it was separated from the rest of the activities. And I think, I remember thinking, oh, why is it separated? And, like, for me, it was like a little bit of an inconvenience. But then when I really, put some thought and had a little more mindfulness of what's going on here, it was like they were creating a space for people, and I don't know if that was their intention, but they created a safer space for people in recovery so that, they didn't, there was a barrier, they're already putting a barrier for people who, might need that for themselves to take care of themselves and be able to celebrate in a healthy way. And I really appreciated that. And I hope that, other people can, learn from that and see like the intention of it, if that was the intention. But I think it was really helpful. So I think when people are creating events in the future, kind of taking that into their practice, how to be more supportive to other people who do want to celebrate.
Yeah, and just
Alicia, I want to ask you a question. I know there's so I'm 48, and I noticed that through the the different generations, you know, they celebrate Pride differently, or they have like thoughts on that, of celebration and things like that. So I was wondering if you can, you know, share yours a little bit of like your, in terms of your generation, you know, pride and self-care, because it's a little different for me being a little older, and a different generation.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a couple of things, right? Like, so, you know, Pride is always the same, right? It's always about like celebrating our queerness. And so as like, whether it's taking pride as a political component, right? Or taking pride as like just celebration component, and both are needed, right? It's, you know, and however people choose to celebrate, you know, is how people choose to celebrate, right? And I don't think it has to do with whether generations or things like that. I think it's more people of like, what are the ways that we are creating space for to recognize like the various different forms of the celebration of pride. And I wanted to hint on something that Cass was saying. It was like, one of the things that I've noticed about my recovery, right? I made my personal decisions, right? That I do no longer use heroin, right? And I recently, you know, me personally, I recently just started socially drinking, right? Smoking, all that. I can say that's legal in New York, right? And, you know, and that is for me, and that's how I practice. But I noticed that when I was, before I made this decision, because I just made this decision, is that don't assume everybody smokes, don't assume everybody drinks. And like, even if you're going to light up or you're going to have drinks, like make it be known. Because I found in most spaces, like people know what to expect at a party, but like, if you're going to light up, be like, hey, I'm about to light this up, anyone mind, right? And then also like, you know, letting people know, even if it's the same group of friends, right? This is not, you know, just about like, but it's about all the time. And, you know, and because sometimes I might not want to be you know, I might not want to smoke, right? I might not want to drink, you know, and like the automatic assumption, and I guess it, you know, it involves whether it's around drinking or smoking of like, cause that's what is a lot of traditions. I know there's various different other drugs at Pride, but you know, when we look at this, you know, it's like, don't automatically pass it, right? Don't go past it to the next person, right? Let people know, is it okay that I light up, right? And always ask the person like, hey, do you want some? And, you know, do not make it feel awkward, because that puts people in a position, especially people who are in newer recovery. You know, that's a hard decision. Oh, I want to feel accepted, right? Because, you know, within my experience in substance abuse, all my friends were getting high, right? So now I changed my lifestyle. So I had to change the people that I was around, right? And so, you know, and that was through like my process of recovery. And so like wanting to be accepted and not having to feel that obligation of using, whether it's at Pride. And I love the idea of like having liquor like separate, like, you know, yes, people enjoy drinking, people enjoy like enjoying things, and some people like to do it, some people realize like it's not for me, like, you know, as you know, for me, heroin is not for me, right? That is not something that is for me. That is something that I know destroys my life and ruins my life. And and people in recovery kind of like have the support services, right? And and then to really not highlight on, it makes it, I don't know, this is for me, it makes it really uncomfortable when I was when I wasn't smoking or drinking, of when people would constantly ask me if I'm okay, right? That, for me, that bothers me. I'm like, okay, thank you for letting me know that there is, yes, I have my personal, like, don't make me feel excluded because I'm making a decision to be sober, right? And I think that is a big component of like, it's like, no, treat me as anybody else in the party. I'm just not going to partake in this. And if I feel uncomfortable, like, I have my resources, right? And people in newer recovery, no, I do not recommend you go to a party where there is no, right? Like that's, but like, as I was in my recovery, like in years of recovery, of like, it's this is, you know, don't make me feel awkward at a party because I'm just trying to have a good time. I can have a good time without alcohol. I can have a good time without weed, because in my sobriety, I learned about that. I learned what it means to actually have fun without stimulants. But yeah, so I wanted to highlight on both pieces, but yeah, and thank you for asking that, Rav. Yeah, I think it's just the celebration of who we're inviting into spaces and how we celebrate Pride and giving that autonomy to how people celebrate Pride. But yeah, thank you.
One tip that I like to share is creating check-in with a physical item that is repetitive in your life. So for example, one of the repetitive items in my life is a door handle, okay? Because I go through doors. And every time I'm going to touch one, I associate it with a check-in to ask myself, how am I now? And just have like a little, 15 seconds. Am I okay? Am I not okay? What do I need? How is my mind? How is my body? Right? Or if there is anything in your surrounding that you interact with to remind you in that sense. At the same time, just like what Alicia also said, looking for and creating the spaces that you need. So, for example, yes, I love going to the parade. I love doing all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what I really want to do is to be in a circle of like 6 people of my neurodivergent folks and a bowl of fidgets that on the table, and all of us just fidgeting and talking and maybe eating something and saying whatever is on our mind, creating that community sense and being proud of it and practicing it. So those are my 2 personal things during Pride.
I do something similar, but I use stress balls. You know, particularly if I'm surrounded by a swarm of people. You know, I know when I reach for that stress ball, it's like, okay, it's time for me to separate myself from the crowd. For a little bit. I also use it. Yeah, Haley, I use stress balls for, stress and anxiety to just kind of, to release. Yeah, they're fantastic to use. And you're using your hands. It's sort of like an active motion. And so I know when I reach for that is going on, and I need to distance myself from wherever is what is happening that it's may impact my emotional state. So I mean, like we all said, there's multiple ways to sort of know ourselves that way, when to step away from a situation, or also when to come back to it. I think that's important as well. I mean, just because you step away from a situation doesn't mean that you can't go back to it at some point. It depends on how, am I comfortable doing that? How much time do I need to de-stress and decompress? To go back to the situation. Maybe you decided you don't want to go back to it. I know it's the end of it. Like it's there's power in choice and self-choice and self-decision making. I think that's one of the beauties of the values of peer support and peer values is that person's, not just person-centeredness, but that you think about yourself, like and like I can make these choices. I want these choices, and maybe that's not what you need right now. So then the important thing is whether you make a choice or you don't make a choice, that's your choice. And I believe it should be validated and celebrated, as long as it doesn't cause any sort of harm to yourself or someone else.
Thank you. I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I really wish we could keep going for another half an hour. We did schedule to be here for an hour tonight, so we're going to respect people's time as always. And I just wanted to thank Cass, first of all, for helping to put everything here together, for inviting all of our panelists to be here, and of course for the work that NAMI New York State does everywhere, and all of the staff at NAMI New York State for supporting people every day with getting through hard times and learning about how to get through those times. I'm so excited I got to meet all three of you today. Thank you so much. I feel like there were just tidbits I wrote down throughout this entire discussion that were so powerful that I really wanted to hold on to them. So this was a great crew of people that really, I think, had some messages that were fantastic for our community. And I wanted to thank all of the people who attended too, especially the people who put really positive, supportive things into the chat. It was really helpful today to propel us, through this journey. So thank you, Hamad. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Phillip, for telling your stories today. That is the most powerful thing that we at NAMI do. It does change the world, and for somebody who is LGBTQ plus, just hearing their story and listening, like really listening, instead of telling your story over theirs, is something that can be profound. Like Alicia said before, it can mean life or death for somebody. So that is something that I just really wanted to round this out with. Please, anybody that's here today, celebrate. I know this was like had some supportive things, some tough talk, but also some really amazing things about how we can care for ourselves during this month. And on that, I'll just round it out. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Cass, did you want to say anything before we go?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, our speakers have shared links and emails, and I did as well. So feel free to take a look and copy some of that stuff down. This recording will be in tomorrow's e-newsletter. It will be on our YouTube channel as well. So if you'd like to go back, you can do that. I also just wanted to remind everyone, this month and every day, right? Be kind to yourself, right? Think about how you can show yourself intentional care, take time to ground yourself, to connect with yourself and, loved ones, find those safe places, find those supportive places and people. And thank you so much for joining us. And just want to remind you all that next month, July, is BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous People of Color Mental Health Awareness Month. We'll be having more sessions with different panelists of speakers. So we'll hope that you look out for more information on that as well. So thank